Welcome back to another video and another consumption test. Today we're going to be doing it with the Audi A6 e-tron in the performance variant, so the variant that's supposed to get you the most amount of range, which is the rear-wheel drive system here with 367 horsepower and a 100 kilowatts an hour battery, net usage 94.9. We're going to look at everything this car offers when it comes to its range. We're going to look at obviously the charging speed. We're going to do a little bit of charging test in here. And this is also the most aerodynamic car that Audi's ever brought out in the Sportback variant with a CV value of 0.21. And this car offers a CV value of 0.24 because we have the Avant version. You can see fairly aerodynamic looking from the front. Let's take a look at the rims here real quick, which we have equipped on here, which are going to be these 21-inch rims with this black design, looking quite nice, quite big rims, so we're going to see how those affect our range. And in general, we're going to list up everything at the end to see what the actual range was, the total time it took us, the charging speed that we got on our charging test, obviously, and the cost that you're going to be facing if you drive 100 kilometers at 80 to 100 kilometers an hour, 120 kilometers an hour, 140, and also top speed. So without further talking, let's get right into the video and start with our first drive. And welcome to the inside of the Audi A6 Avant e-tron Performance, quite a long name. I've set up now to drive in the Efficiency Plus because we're doing our first test behind a truck here, driving at around 80 to 90, maybe even 100 kilometers an hour, depending on how fast he goes. In Efficiency Plus, the car lowers itself to, I think the second lowest settings here, so it says the red here. In Efficiency, I think it goes all the way down. I don't know what the difference is there, actually. Let me see. If I go into Efficiency, no, it does not. If I go into Comfort, it goes up a little bit. And Efficiency Plus, you can see it dims the screens. They're not going to take too much, electricity, and it also basically minimizes the information that you got on the display. I do still have adaptive cruise control and stuff like that selected here, and I do always love that we have that little button here on the bottom where you can change everything between it, and it does a nice little animation here in the display and also on the heads-up display showing me my distance to the front and also where that radar is actually sensing there is a car in front of me. We also have these virtual mirrors, which is the first time I've actually had them in any car. I remember we could have had them in the Ioniq 6 because they also have that, and in there it's supposed to get the CV value down by 0.01 and also the range by up, it's supposed to increase it by around 7 kilometers. So I'm just going to take that value also for this because I don't think there's much difference in them, and nothing, Audi didn't claim anything about how much it's going to lower the CV value, how much more speed range you're going to get. I'll say they look pretty cool, but it takes a long time to get used to them because the angle is kind of weird in my opinion, and also it's a fairly small screen, but it does give you, like, you can see if this guy's turning now, it's going to give me this visual feedback in yellow that there's actually somebody there. And there you go, you can see that there's yellow. And if I also blink, for instance, if I just blink right now, you can see also that we have that light bar on the top there which is going to blink, and also in this screen it's going to blink by itself as well. Lots of tech features in here. We do also have the Tech Pro in here, which gives you, for instance, that virtual that side mirror, digital, what do you call it, like a passenger display. It's only going to work if somebody's actually sitting here on the side. And we also get air suspension with that, and that air suspension is really comfortable. Isolation here is also quite decent. Especially here when you're driving at lower speeds, you're just gonna hear the cars whiz past, but I don't have to speak up in any sense or form. We also got Apple CarPlay in here, so you can see our current route, which is going to be wireless. Inductive charging all the way on the bottom here, which does get quite hot if you're charging your phone. And we got our center console here with a lot of piano black, which I'm not the biggest fan of because it just doesn't look too nice. And I gotta say, I haven't been a big fan of the new Audi interiors in terms of just similarity, because every single car so far they've brought out with this interior, or new car that they've brought out, has the exact same interior. If I'm sitting in this, I couldn't tell you, okay, I'm sitting in an A6 or I'm sitting in the new A5. I don't know what the hell I'm sitting in. Or the new Q5. There's no difference in them, which I really don't like too much. And the quality, you can see here, it moves quite a lot. This also moves quite a lot, which I'm not the biggest fan of. It just feels a little bit cheaper compared to the previous model, especially in the A6. In the A6, just the previous model. I mean, there wasn't an e-tron of the A6 before, but this just doesn't feel too high quality. But otherwise, you get a really comfortable seating position in here. We do not have massage function here, which is a little bit unfortunate, but we get a wonderful Bang & Olufsen sound system, which sounds amazing. And also this absolutely wonderfully big panoramic window, which you can also dim in this kind of sense, but you cannot actually open it because it's just a panoramic sunroof with no openable way. But yeah, other than that, the car is going to have around, actually no, let's talk about the horsepower once we're doing around 140 kilometers an hour drive here. I'm only filming the 80 and also the 140 kilometers an hour test because we are currently filming two cars, the Kia EV6 in the GT line, the new facelifted model, and this. So make sure to like, subscribe, so you can actually, well, you don't forget to watch that video. So I'm only filming these two because we're filming two cars at once, and the other car I'm doing basically the opposite tests, 120 and also top speed. But my colleague is going to be doing the German videos in them, so he's going to be doing the 120 and also the top speed test of this car. Therefore I'm only filming these two. But yeah, let's get back to you once we are talking about our top speed run. Actually, our top speed run for 140 kilometers an hour test. And on the right and also on the left side, you will be able to charge the car, but just on the left side, if you look from the back, you will be able to charge the car fast, which is obviously a DC, and the AC on the other side, you can flip that out. You can see we have a very, very big port here, and it's also quite close up to the window, so I don't know if they maybe design-wise, in my opinion, it doesn't look too nice. Just to put it a little bit lower would have been nicer. This is going to be electrical, which doesn't always work the smoothest and sometimes feel like you're breaking it. And like I said, we can charge it here on the left side with up to 270 kilowatts with the bigger battery. The smaller battery is only going to be charging at 225, both 800 volt architectures, so still quite quick, and both are going to charge from 10 to 80% in 21 minutes. Let's look at our charging test that we got. We charged the car from around 10 up to 80%, or exactly 80%. And we got a max charging speed of 275.8 kilowatts, so quite high. And also the average speed was 191, so again, very nice. And the loading curve is also very fantastic. It goes up and then smoothly goes down. So we get a very high average speed with a 21-minute time of what we were actually charging. So that is a very good speed in my opinion. And then like I said, okay, I didn't even touch it in close. That is fantastic, maybe because it took so long, I was talking too much. But usually, let me just show you the usual way you actually close it. And welcome back. We are now at 140. Listen to the outside noise, still fairly decent in my opinion. I'm sorry about that light. Let me do this so it's not going to blend you too much. 140. Sound isolation still fairly decent. We do have obviously the air suspension here, so we are also, okay, it's still gonna blend you a lot. Jesus. Let me just do this, I guess. I'll have to move along with it. What am I gonna say? So we are here at 140 with adaptive cruise control turned on. Okay, now it's behind my head. That is good. And still very, very comfortable to drive. The air suspension does a superb job of smoothing out the road here. And it's just comfortable in general. You don't have that constant engine roar or something like that. It is just electrical power, which is obviously not going to produce any sound. You can turn on sound if you want to, but I usually just keep it turned off. Let's quickly also talk about the price. So the starting price of the A6 Avant the A6 Avant in the e-tron variant is going to be 64,450 euros. If you want to get the performance with the biggest amount of range, which is claimed to be around 620 up to, actually no, 627 up to 720 kilometers, and that is going to start around 77,000 euros. The way it's standing here, we're looking at 101,000 euros, so 24,000 euros of extras. That is quite a lot, and I'll be honest, for that price, I maybe expect a little bit better quality. I mean, quality is not bad, don't get me wrong, but it's just, some parts, they just move a lot, and you already have hard plastic up on the very top here and on the bottom. Comparing it to, for instance, a BMW, you're going to have a lot better quality, even though we don't test drive BMWs, but I've sat in quite a lot of them, so therefore I can say just BMW just has a little bit better material quality in my opinion. The car is also going to be well, for saying it's a performance, it's more of a performance in the distance, not in its power figures, because you're only looking at 367 horsepower constantly and 380 If you're looking at launch control, which, well, you can't do on the Autobahn, so you're just limited to 367 horsepower, but you do get a top speed of 210 kilometers an hour, which is quite nice. 0 to 100 is going to be 5.4 seconds, and the car is also going to be having 565 Newton meters, which again is not bad at all. But if you're driving this over longer distance, just going to be very practical, because you get a big boot with the Avant variant. Well, not too big, but still quite big. Golf clubs are going to fit in vertical, like if you just turn them a little bit, they're going to fit in perfectly without having to flip over the rear seats. And you can obviously also flip over the rear seats, or you get a small center tunnel, which is also always quite nice. But what I gotta say is just the technology in the car when it comes to adaptive cruise control and stuff like that. It's just superb on Audis. It works so smoothly, and there's also really no problems with it at all. You get a wonderful display which shows you all of the relevant information for that adaptive cruise control. It's just simple to use, and I love just having that little button on the bottom, or that little knob on the bottom, where you can select everything through it. And now let's take a look at the most interesting thing, and that is going to be all of the numbers. I have also added some new things for the table here. For instance, how much range are you going to get with 70%, meaning from 80% down to 10%, which is most of the times when you're driving over long distances, you'll be charging up to 80% and down to around 10% until you find a charging spot. So I've added a figure for that, so you actually know how far you're going to be getting for longer distances. So the car claims a WLTP range of 650 kilometers, which is actually the most we've ever gotten from a WLTP claim. The second longest we've ever gotten was from the Volkswagen ID.7 Pro with 618 kilometers. Just for a reminder, the battery capacity is 94.9 kilowatts an hour in its net capacity, so we're going to be looking at that. So first numbers are going to be the 100 kilometers an hour behind the truck. There we had an average consumption of 14.6 kilowatts an hour, which is not the best, not the worst, pretty average, with an average speed of 85.71 kilometers an hour, total time 28 minutes, and that would give us a total range then of, let me quickly see it, 650 kilometers. If you were to drive 70%, you'd be looking at around 455 kilometers if you were to drive behind the truck. That would cost you a total of €7.15 with my current ENBW medium plan of 49 cents per kilowatt hour. 120 kilometers an hour, you're looking at already 20.9 kilowatts an hour, so quite high compared to some competition. ID.7 Pro, for instance, was at 19.1, so a little bit less, but not too much. Average speed 104.4 kilometers an hour with a total time of 23 minutes. Total range there would be 454 kilometers with 70%. You're looking at 318 kilometers, and the total cost there would be €10.24. Then 140 kilometers an hour, actually not too big of an increase, and that is where this car also actually is quite efficient in my opinion. You're looking at only 23.4 kilowatts an hour. That is pretty close to what the ID.7 also had, which was a very efficient engine at higher speeds. Average speed there was 133.3 kilometers an hour, so fairly close to that 140, 18 minutes, and that would give you a total range of 406 kilometers. If you were to drive at 70%, 284 kilometers, kilometers, and at 140 kilometers an hour, I gotta say that's actually not bad at all in my opinion. €11.47 would also be a total price there. Then top speed is where, well, this gets quite high at 43.6 kilowatts an hour. Average speed there was also very good at 160 kilometers an hour, which is very high considering you don't have too high of a top speed on this car, and a total time of 15 minutes. That would only give you a range of 218 kilometers, and if you were to drive 80 down to 10%, only 152 kilometers. So you'd have to, well, kind of already figure out where you're going to charge next as soon as you get onto your Autobahn. And then the price there would also be quite high at €21.36. Hopefully you guys did enjoy this video. It always takes a very long time to make these videos, so I really do appreciate all of the support, and make sure to like, subscribe, so we can test more cars like this in the future on these tests and get a better comparison through all of the EV range that are currently on the market. Hopefully you guys enjoyed, and we'll see you next time. Bye bye.